Governor Schwarzenegger's attempt to actually, I thought a good attempt to address some of the needs that students are going through, and I think it was mostly focused on at-risk students. Am I correct with that?
Correct.
Can you kind of speak on that?
It provided money for districts to hire more school counselors. Because what the research shows, especially with the students in California, in 2006 UCLA did a study, and what they found was students who had fewer counselors basically weren't going to college at a higher rate as students who had more counselors. So what they basically found was if you reduce the counselor ratio, you hire more counselors, then you're going to have more students who are able to get accepted into college.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And so really that's what AB 1802 did, was provided funds to hire more counselors so that school counselors could actually focus on those students that weren't reaching their full potential. And we actually did studies through University of San Diego, actually, and they found that this funding actually did help improve the number of students who went on to college. It decreased the dropout rate. It improved the number of students who were actually passing the California high school exit exam. So it was a feat for school counselors in California when AB 1802 was passed.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, because of the budget cuts in California and our budget problems, a few years ago, the districts were given leeway to be allowed to use this funding and put that towards their general education instead of specifically using it towards school counselors. So every district had a decision and a choice to make. Some school districts decided to keep those funds in place and spend it on school counselors because they value the work that we do. There were many school districts that decided not to use the funds for school counselors, and they swept those funds into the general fund.
Gotcha. I have a question, and it's pretty straightforward. Our in-studio guest, she's a counselor within the Fontana Unified School District. That situation's still up in the air, so I'd rather throw this question at you. What can not only people do, but more specifically, what would Fontana Unified School District look like? What are some potential problems that will come about, in your opinion, if we eliminated all of our counselors at all of our sites?
Oh, it's frightening to even think about that, because when I used the analogy earlier about comparing a doctor's skill set to a secretary's skill set. Well, if we use the same analogy and we take a look at a hospital, if a school was like a hospital and you have no doctors in your hospital, that would be the equivalent of having a school with no school counselors. What is that going to look like? It's scary. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch the actual board hearing.
You did? Yes, I did.
You did, yeah, and the students spoke so eloquently. They talked about how school counselors saved their lives. They talked about how school counselors were the heart of their schools. They mentioned how school counselors inspire. So it's really frightening for me to picture what does a school look like without a school counselor. I think what we're going to see is a definite disparity in the quality of education. When I was waiting online, I heard one of you mention how you just felt like this was unjust and not equal. And I think you hit it right on the head. It basically is an access and equity issue.
Yes.
Who are going to be the people that service our students, especially students who are first generation graduates going on to college? How do we get them there? Who are going to be the people that remove the barriers? Who are going to be the people that provide the crisis counseling? I was looking at a study. There's something called California Healthy Kids Survey that school districts across California give their students. And what I was looking at is, for Fontana specifically, last year's 9th graders indicated that 20% of them indicated that they had thought about suicide and completing suicide. That's scary. Who are going to be the people there that provide services to our students that are most needy? Who are going to keep those students safe? It's normally a school counselor that does that. So it really is unfathomable to think about what it's going to look like.
That's right.
I know that it will be disastrous. it would be, I have a friend, Dean, and he used the analogy of cutting school counselors during this unprecedented time of economic disaster is the equivalent as firing a fire department right before the onset of Santa Ana winter.
Go ahead. I mean, we're talking about a budget crisis that's widespread.
Right.
You're talking about middle-income folks. Now, if we're just talking about the counselors particularly, you're talking about middle-income folks, having them lose their jobs. How are they going to sustain their livelihood? How are they going to contribute to our economy? Then, of course, the trickle effect would be the students. How are they going to then become successful? How are they then going to navigate their way through, in many cases, a foreign school system and get in positions where they can contribute to it? So we're actually, it's not even a Band-Aid. This is, to me, this is like ripping the veins open on a patient, ripping off the fluids.
Right.
And Ms. Gomez-Lee, I can empathize with what you just said, because the student you described was me. I'm first-generation Mexican-American. As I mentioned in my opening, had it not been for a very influential counselor in my life, I don't know where I'd be. And so I completely empathize with these students. They need somebody who can take them through these uncharted territories. And for me, the idea of a so-called guidance technician with a high school diploma, I mean, no disrespect to them, but they're also delving into uncharted territory themselves. So,
I have a last question for you, Ms. Gomez-Lee. Can you just kind of help our listeners along this path? What can we do? What can folks do, just everyday folks? Maybe we have listeners out there that aren't in education and they're just concerned about their grandchildren. Maybe we have somebody in Hesperia that's concerned about their daughter who's going through this educational system. What can we do to get involved?
I think everyone in California should be concerned. Whether you have children or not, we all know a child somewhere, whether it's a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a daughter, a sister, or a brother. One of the things that I highly recommend is that you contact your local legislator and you let your local legislator know that we cannot continue to affect our students' lives by cutting education. It's important that we invest in education. You mentioned before, how much money do we spend on prisons? You know, we need to spend the same amount of money, more money, on educating our students because they are our future. So definitely contact your local legislator. Contact your local school board members. Let them know, you know, that you are willing to take a stand and that you're not going to tolerate it anymore. Stand up for your students. Go to school board meetings. Let your voices be heard. Let people know that it's important that we keep school counselors, that we don't continue to cut the lifeline of our schools.
Go ahead. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. This is definitely not one of those situations where it's a Sunday afternoon conversation. This is ongoing. Definitely have this radio station support, this program support. We'll get the message out as best we can and keep doing what you do.
Thank you for having me on the show, and I'd like to send a special shout out to all of my students out in Moreno Valley, and to the wonderful school counselors in California. Continue to do what you do, and let's continue to save our children.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
That was great.